So 718, you can see the branches of the left coronary and the right coronary. It's right in the next page. So the aorta is somewhere, when it comes off of the heart, exactly where it comes, it puts out the coronary artery, it splits on the right and the left, becomes your right and left coronary artery. You can see in the anterior and posterior view, it's labeled LCA or RCA, you see that? But there is a branch, it has a specific name. So if you look in the description for the LCA, what are the two branches you see? The left coronary, first of all, let's do the left coronary. It puts out a branch that goes in the anterior intraventricular sulcus. Remember the sulcus we have drawn earlier? So that's going to be your anterior intraventricular branch of your LCA. The other branch is going to make a circle around your heart, going behind the wraps around your heart. That's your circumflex branch, or they call it circumflex artery of the LCA. Okay, so you can recognize that in the picture also. Then the right coronary artery puts out, there may be a marginal branch also on the margin. The right coronary artery puts out also a branch on the margin, edge of the heart. We call it the marginal branch of the RCA. Where is the other branch going to go? That's going to go on the same orientation, but on the back, meaning the other sulcus. What is the sulcus on the back? Posterior intraventricular sulcus. The branch is posterior intraventricular branch of the RCA. So now you know the branches of the both coronary arteries. So coronary artery hits right and left. So the left goes in the middle between the ventricles, around the circumflex, and one on the margin, and the right, one on the margin, one on the back. There may be even smaller branches, but these are the main branches. So the parallel veins you have, so if you see the anterior and posterior, there is one vein right in the anterior intraventricular sulcus. That's your cardiac vein. So the vein in the middle, in the front is your great cardiac vein. Then if you see on the posterior view, in that sulcus, you can see the posterior intraventricular vein. Then you can see the marginal vein on the edge. And then you see a big tube on the coronary sulcus. That's your coronary sinus. It's not a vein, it's a sinus. The difference between vein and sinus, it doesn't have any typical structure. Like a vein is like a hollow tube, it's a passage. Like the sinus up here, space. Okay? Sinus means a tube or something like a hollow tube, coronary sinus. So if you have any of these tiny vessels, as you can see the size comparison between your aorta vena cava and these tiny branches, then you have myocardial infarction because you block the supply of oxygen to the heart muscle cells, they die, and then you cannot do its job. Alright, the next we are going to skip one page and go to the cardiac conduction, electric conduction, page 721, where it says conduction system. The cardiac muscle and all, the same thing you have already done in AP1, the skeletal smooth cardiac muscle. What is cardiac muscle? It's involuntary. What are the structures in the cardiac muscle? So I don't want to repeat the same thing. So if you look at the conduction system, again you see a picture of the heart. You can use the same picture you used, or you can sketch one. This is for the electric conduction. You can see all the yellow wiring. You can see inside the heart. So it's real electric wiring. But what do we have? Neurons, right? The neural networks form the electric wiring inside the body. This is in the heart. So if you take the heart, there are places where you have like an electric switch, turn on, turn off. This is your pacemaker, the first structure where electricity is being turned on, meaning action potential is being started. You know the action potential, how the muscle and neuron works, right? The resting potential, resting membrane potential, the threshold, action potential, the different levels of electric potential. So the action potential is triggered by this first structure, which we are going to call SA node. What does SA stand for? Sinoatrial node. So this happens to be your pacemaker. If it is defective, you replace. Sometimes we replace the heart too. So from here you have neurons going to the neural fibers going to the walls of the atria. So atrial contraction occurs. And then the signals go down also to the next level where you have another switch that's between your atria and ventricles, so they will call it AV node. So when this fires, electric current passes, action potential passes down the myocardium through those bundles, like electric cable bundles. These are also called bundle branches. So there is a right and left AV bundle. Okay, so these bundle branches carry the signals all the way down to the wall, where it branches further to reach all the cells. And at that point, we call them Purkinje fibers. So you need to know this organization, where I start, where I go next, what are the branches, and how do we end up there. When electric current passes from here to there is a little pause for a few seconds. Why would you think it has to pause? What happens if you pass the electric current right away? You'll be contracting your ventricles. What if you contract when it is half full? You don't want to make your heart pump half full. So you need to allow time for the chambers to fill up. So there's a short delay that gives time for the ventricles to fill up. So when this electric current goes, atria contract, whatever blood already is there will be pushed down, then when it fills up, electric current passes, makes the muscles to work. So this contract pushes the blood into the pulmonary trunk and into the aorta, right? So when you do that, this is going to expand. When you are doing this, it does the opposite. So there will be negative pressure in these chambers that sucks the blood from the vena cava above and below, and also from the pulmonary vein. Nerve supply to the heart, your vagus nerve, the very important nerve. Anybody remembers the number? 9? 9. 9. Yeah, you're right. Once one finishes the anatomy final, very good vacation ahead. Ho, ho, ho. So the very good vacation, number 9, Vegas. That splits and reaches your heart and it becomes cardiac plexus, the branches, and the actual nerves are the cardiac nerves. So a simple, there's no magic with that. So moving on. Electrical and contractile activity of the heart. So when the ventricles contract, that's when we call it. When the ventricles relax, what do we call that? Diastole. So contraction, relaxation. Ventricles. So during systole, what happens to the atria? During systole, what is systole?
Contraction.
Of ventricles. So what about the atria? They will be relaxed, opposite. So during diastole, ventricles are relaxed, atria will contract. For easy convenience, they refer to the ventricles, okay, but atria are doing something too, the opposite of this. So systole is ventricular contraction, diastole is ventricular relaxation. the cardiac rhythm, okay? You know when it does this or when it is slow. So this rhythm is set by first this and this. And sometimes something else can modify the rhythm. So we have names for that. So under cardiac rhythm, we have sinus rhythm, nodal rhythm. Sinus rhythm is the one set by the SA node, and this one, that's your nodal rhythm. If anything odd, anything else causes any odd beating of the heart, that's called ectopic focus. Yeah, that leads to fibrillation, then you use the defibrillator. So if anything, the muscles are not working at the same time, then the defibrillator helps to put it back on track. We call it ventricular fibrillation. The defibrillator is the one that reverses that. So normally the beats are about 60 to 100 range, with about 75 being the average, 70, 75 being the average beats per minute. So thankfully, unlike your pH, what is the range? 7.35 to 7.45. What's your body temperature? 98.62, maybe 100. There's not much room, right? But this one, thankfully, is a broad. All right, pacemaker physiology. Pacemaker is, okay, your SNO, right? So how do we set up the electric potential? So I don't want to repeat myself. If you can recall how you set up electric potential in a muscle, in a neuron, okay? So these are all neurons, by the way. So what are the ions that are primarily involved? Sodium and potassium. So normally inside is more negative when it's resting membrane potential, right? Remember that. Here also you have those peaks, right? When it is at the base or it's even further down, the base, that's your RMP. And when it goes to a certain point, that's your threshold. And above that is your action potential. So when you are resting, we are polarized. When you go above, then you depolarize, and then you come back to repolarize. Sometimes you hyperpolarize, so depending on the case. So the resting membrane potential, as in this case, you can see it's about negative 70, negative 60 in that range. This will be about negative 55, and you can go as high as, in case of the skeletal muscles, it will go as high as plus 35. Here it goes slightly above 0. So depending on the case, depending on the muscle, depending on where it's needed, but you have to have the same concept in mind. The cardiac muscles also are operated with the same principle, the sodium and potassium inflow and outflow. Then let's go to page 725. Let's look at the EKG. So if you have ever seen an EKG chart that resembles earthquake. Earthquake has the same 3 peaks, by the way. The way the earth shakes, our heart shakes. I didn't do it perfect, but you have the picture in the book, something like this. So you get 3 waves, P, QRS, and G. So then if you have the adjacent, we also measure the peak from the baseline, how much distance. Earlier they used to count those squares on the graph sheet. Now there's a machine that does that for us, right? And also the width and all these points. So it's much more complicated. For our purpose, we'll try to understand the basics of EKG. I have a nice video explaining the EKG. If you like, you can in my list. Okay, there is someone explaining the EKG in more detail. For those of you who are going into nursing, you'll get it more when you get into the program. So they look at all these different intervals. You see the PR interval, meaning between these two. If you draw a line here, draw a line here, that's your PR interval, and QT is that, right? And then PQ, ST, and all those, they look at the peaks and also these distances. So let's say if the peaks are higher or lower than normal, okay, with respect to each one of them. So if they are higher than normal, that means there is enlargement. Before I do that, let's correspond these peaks with what is happening. Let's turn over the page, figure 1916. Again, I want you to take 5 minutes and look this up. Your P wave occurs when your atria are depolarized. Can you see step number 2? Atrial depolarization, meaning if the repolarization is throwing you off, replace depolarization with contraction. Polarization with relaxation. So atrial contraction. Then you get the P wave. I put C. And then when you get QRS, what do you have? Depolarization meaning contraction. So you can have the QRS is formed when you have ventricular depolarization, right? So the ventricles are contracting. And then when do you get the T wave form? Ventricular repolarization, meaning they are relaxing. So as you form these waves, atrial contraction, ventricular contraction, ventricular relaxation. So if you know that, so if any of these two peaks, they are higher than normal, that means it takes more energy, meaning electric potential to get that level of contraction. Okay, so that's possibly due to enlargement in the chambers, depending on which peak you're talking about, atria or ventricles. And if there is lower than normal peak, that means maybe there is some defect. So all the muscles are not doing the normal amount of work. Okay, so then it will be slower. But what about the width? If the width is longer than usual, that means your electric current is taking more time to pass the same distance. So there is a delay in the electric conduction. And if it is very short, that means like a short circuit or something, the electric current is not passing properly, so there may be some defect in the physical structure itself. So if it is shorter, any of those PQ, QB, whatever, you saw the red lines, right? If they are shorter, then it means there is some defect in the conduction system itself. So this is a very generic overview as to what you can see from the chart, but as it is more complicated, as you see in the next page, you have some samples of the normal rhythm and all the other conditions like atrial fibrillation, ventricular fibrillation, heart block, and all of that. So you'll do more of this when you go into your programs. Okay. So just know what is EKG, what are the peaks, which one comes first, next, and some general information about the EKG. The electrocardiogram, is the test, electrocardiograph is your chart. Okay, let's take 10 minutes, we'll